Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this very important topic of public safety. Today, House Republicans are here to call for hearings as soon as possible on bills that will support our law enforcement officers and hold criminals accountable and also keep our communities safe. These bills have been specifically requested by our law enforcement community. The brave men and women who wear that uniform every day and put their lives on the line to protect and serve, they deserve to have the resources needed to do their jobs effectively. But at the same time, we need to pass laws that enhance public safety by cracking down on crime, catching the dangerous offenders, and ensuring that criminals are fully held accountable. We know that public safety should be one of the highest priorities of government, and these hearings that we are requesting would allow a full public hearing and a full public airing of policy proposals that would uphold the law and order here in Minnesota. Our citizens and law enforcement officers alike deserve no less. We have a number of policies that we will be talking about today, and with that, I will turn it over to our public safety lead, Representative Paul Novotny.
Thank you, Leader Dameth. As she says, my name is Paul Novotny. I'm the public safety minority lead I am from District 30B. The reason we called this press conference today is threefold. First and most importantly, I want to let the men and women in public safety know that a strong majority of Minnesotans appreciate their work and that they will do it, that they do as a sacrifice for them and their families and the communities. As you know, the public safety community is hurting. Everyone is aware of the 3 losses from the Burnsville incident, but less public is the fact that in the last week, and while I cannot go into the details of those tragic losses, I can only tell you that we have lost 2 more members of the law enforcement community. My pledge to all of those affected families is that we will honor the lost loved ones' memories by not abandoning those they left behind. Second, we need to let law enforcement know that we will continue to fight for them, so that in the course of their duties, if in good faith and in the best of their abilities, they are trying to save a person being held against their will or following a court order to arrest an individual, or doing whatever it takes to follow their duties, if they are forced to take legal action to save lives or lives of others, that they can expect to receive the same due process and protections of the courts and not have to fear politically motivated prosecutions, whether they are serving in the most remote areas of the state or the most populated county. And third, at a time when nearly all law enforcement agencies are struggling to find and retain qualified individuals for their law enforcement programs in this dangerous work, I will be highlighting just a few of the bills that have been offered by members of the other side of the aisle, which at best are discouraging to the law enforcement community, which hurts the recruitment and retention, or worse, causes them to hesitate or not take illegal action to protect themselves or others, which can be catastrophic. I will start by talking about a couple of my bills to start with. The first was inspired by the recent actions in the Trooper Lonergan case, where we saw the defense in regards to the use of force expert withholding information that use of force expert had provided. And it was only after an extended court process that it was released. And this is amazing to me because at the same time this information was being withheld from defense, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office was releasing her own policies, an enhanced version of Brady Giglio policies, to sanction law enforcement officers that she deemed to be withholding the same exculpatory information. I should also add that I have a bill that would establish a task force to create a uniform standard agreed to by the courts and the county attorneys of the state, as well as law enforcement leaders, so that there is a uniform Brady-Giglio standard in the state, not arbitrarily decided and administered by one person. My last bill was drafted before the recent incident where the Ramsey County deputy was shot at and the deputy was injured by a pursuing vehicle. As you might be aware, that there was legislation passed in the last session that allowed the use of GPS trackers to be placed on stolen vehicles with the goal of reducing crashes and accidents following these stolen vehicles. As a result of that law being passed, these same trackers, for fear of being found in violation of court decisions, departments that have these trackers are not using them on fleeing vehicles. That was specifically discussed when we had the bills last year, and it was excluded, so they are not using these highly valuable and useful assets to track fleeing vehicles. My bill would allow the use of the GPS trackers to be placed on these vehicles so that they can back off, not have to follow as close as we saw in the situation with the Ramsey County deputy, which would do nothing but enhance the safety to the public, to the officers, and finally to the suspects that are driving the vehicles. I will now turn the presentation over to Representative Engen, who will speak briefly about his bill.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Wanted to highlight a specific bill that was actually recommended by Sheriff Fletcher. Right now we're seeing an epidemic of carjackings and car thefts in the 7-county metro area. In this bill, House File 4059, it addresses that epidemic by extending offenses not just to the driver of a stolen vehicle, but also to those who are in the car as well. So we have several cases where they can only bring charges to that driver. And this would create a gross misdemeanor offense for somebody who has in multiple occasions been found in a stolen vehicle knowingly. And it would create a misdemeanor penalty for the first time. So we have to address this. Folks are scared. They're seeing it happen more and more. And we even hear the stories of folks who have been the victim of a carjacking more than 4 times. That's simply insane. We can't allow that to happen, and this will crack down on that. So thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Representative Brian Johnson, House District 28A, most of Isanti County and part of Chisago County. Spent 27 years in law enforcement. My bill deals with the fleeing statute, which have not been updated since 2011. This was brought forth by law enforcement as well. They're seeing more and more vehicles that they're chasing. A lot of times in the metro area, it's carjacked vehicles and stolen vehicles. They're running stop signs, driving on the wrong side of the road, not with no care or and an absolute disregard for the safety of the citizens of this area. This bill makes it a felony up to 5 years if you're driving on the wrong side of the road, running stop signs, and doing a number of other things while fleeing in a motor vehicle, knowing that it's a law enforcement officer behind you, pursuing you. I feel this is necessary because these people are endangering the lives of law-abiding citizens, going back and forth from work, going back and forth to their churches, doing things with their family, and it's putting them in grave danger when they do this. With that, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Whitty. I represent 57B in Lakeville, and I appreciate you being here today. My bill, which was heard on the floor last week as brought to the attention on an urgency and brought up in public safety, Last year's tax omnibus included $300 million in public safety aid to local communities for police and fire equipment. For some reason, the purchase of armored or tactical vehicles and costs of expanding or improving a police station were excluded as eligible uses for the public safety aid. My bill and amendment will lift the restrictions and untie the hands of our law enforcement leaders, our police chiefs and sheriffs, and trust them that they know what they need to keep our communities safe. It makes armored or tactical vehicles cost of expanding or improving a police station eligible for use for public safety aid. Our law enforcement is under attack. We need to be supporting them, not just days on the vigils or the incidents, not just at funerals, but 365 days, and this would support them and keep them safe in our communities. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Representative Kristen Robbins, 37A, which is Maple Grove in western Hennepin County. I have a bill, 4970, that was brought by as an idea to me by the city of Maple Grove, where we had an officer dragged for 120 feet by a suspect who had been stopped for a traffic violation and was asked to step out of the car for a sobriety test. During the sobriety test, the suspect got back in the car and our officer was dragged and sustained injuries. Fortunately, after some time off work and some therapy, he was able to return to work. The city had asked for the highest possible charge, second-degree felony assault with a dangerous weapon. Instead, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty filed felony fleeing a peace officer and felony obstructing a legal process with a peace officer. The city believed that they had enough evidence to sustain the highest charge, but Mary Moriarty refused to charge it. By declining the second-degree felony, she didn't even consider a fourth-degree felony assault of a peace officer, despite the officer having sustained injuries. Most concerning is that Hennepin County Attorney Moriarty had charged the fourth-degree assault of a peace officer in a similar case 3 months earlier in Minneapolis, where the officer was dragged 10 feet. In our case, the officer was dragged 120 feet. So my bill is very simple. It allows city attorneys in Hennepin County to charge cases where the county attorney declines to charge incidents involving a peace officer, where there's probable cause. It's very narrowly tailored, but it really is important to address these issues. Cities want to be able to step up and support their officers, and they are currently prohibited from doing so if the county attorney declines a charge. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm State Representative Jim Nash. I represent District 48A, that is Central Carver County. My bill is House File 4452, and the gist of what 4452 says is that a county attorney must, in the instance of the Trooper Lonergan situation, must use the grand jury process if they are to charge the officer with a crime. What you've seen in the news and what you've seen play out over the number of weeks, and many of your stations have reported on it, is that County Attorney Moriarty did impanel a grand jury and then effectively ignored the process, used them for the investigative purposes, but did not listen to them whether she should or should not charge them out. She made that decision solely on her own, and I would say that the decision to do so was very capricious. What we have seen since then is a number of people who have come out and said that it was a proper use of force, and I want to crystallize the whole conversation around this bill around one thing. Trooper Lonergan had a tremendous duty to protect not only himself, but his partner and the public. And if you listen to what the use of force expert said, that it was a justifiable shooting, it was done to protect the life of his partner. And what has been found out in testimony and documents that have been found since then is that Attorney Moriarty has been pulling things out of context and has chosen to go a route solely on her own that is reckless, irresponsible, and capricious. So the county attorney has a great weight on their shoulders, but the biggest weight should be to follow proper procedure, should be to use the grand jury process, particularly in this case. And anything short of that, as I would say to County Attorney Moriarty, is reckless. We are here to make sure that we give the men and women in law enforcement our full backing. And if something were to happen, then you should use the grand jury process, not something that you just decide on your own because of a personal conviction one way or another. I know that our group will now stand for questions.
When you look at the political reality, Democrats control House, Senate, and governor's office, how far are any of these likely to go?
Well, I know there's negotiations and there's pressure from some of the stakeholder groups for the Brady Giglio bill. We are putting pressure on, and we hope to get modification of some of the really bad or discouraging bills that I spoke of that they have dropped. I have not seen the DE that just dropped on, for example, we've got the case or the bill that Representative Frazier has on secondary stops, preventing secondary stops for equipment violations. I'm told it's a pretty extensive delete all that came in that I have not had a chance to read before we walked over, but pressure is helping with that, I believe. But that's just one of those bills that, like some of the other bills that we've already heard or seen that have been dropped lately, like the several bills about qualified immunity that they're continuing to push, extending the or deleting the statute of limitations for being vulnerable to a civil lawsuit. These are all things that hang over the head and cause people to second guess that we just can't have that hesitation. Have we seen how fast these situations can go sideways? These highly trained officers, like in the Trooper Longergan case, made a split-second decision. People are slow motion playing that incident and then can pick things out at 18 to 20 reduction in time. You don't have that. You can't go slow motion when you're in these lethal use of force situations. And we just need to let those officers know that we're going to continue fighting these bills. And if nothing else, call them out so people realize where the values of one side are.
Representative Whitty, can I ask you about your bill? Yesterday, in the very heated hearing where you tried to amend it, Representative Gomez and Frazier were talking about how, this is not needed because we haven't heard anything about this being a demand from law enforcement. Wondering what you've heard and why you think that this needs to be included.
Thank you for that question. We have seen after incidents, we make policy. We saw after the Burnsville, we need a need here with armored vehicles. KARE 11 did a great story on the radio traffic of the officers needing more armored vehicles. We saw in Oakdale how we had to rescue 4 officers that were pinned down. The reason they haven't seen the need is because it wasn't in the bill. It wasn't allowed. So law enforcement hasn't been asking, but they are sure talking now. If you go and look on Facebook, there are posts out there that are highlighting this, and I've received calls today thanking us for trying to untie their hands, let them make the decisions. This will cost $0. It's just allowing them to spend the money how they want. The talk was, we can regionalize this. Why does each police department need this? They do. The armored vehicle in the Burnsville incident is Dakota County. And it was hit by over 40 rifle rounds and was needed to protect our first responders, but also the children that were in that home that the officers were called there for. And the piece about that is each of those agencies put money in. So if their hands were untied, they could each put in money, and this could be the regional, or in Plymouth's case, they're trying to look for one that will have the capability if someone have a 300-gallon tank on the back with a nozzle on the top. So if someone would light a Molotov cocktail, throw it at the officers, if they would unfortunately light themselves on fire or an apartment building, they could quickly get there without harming the fire department and all that. There were serious rounds thrown at that in the Burnsville incident. And I tried to say this yesterday because it was like, I think Chair Gomez said, I'm in search, or I'm in a solution trying to find a problem. That's pretty disrespectful knowing what just happened 3 weeks ago. And I will say this has never been about politics for me, and I wish it never got politicized. This is personal because I lost 3 Burnsville heroes that were out there fighting for their communities. I put that uniform on for 27 years, knowing that I might have to pay the ultimate sacrifice for my partners and community. And that's what we're doing for our law enforcement today, thanking them and standing up for them. So I appreciate that question because right after I started getting feedback from law enforcement, because the reason there's no need is because they just couldn't use it. And they want their hands untied. They want to use this for the ways to protect their communities. So thank you.
Representative Novotny, I have a question for you. You mentioned the Brady Giglio bills. Could you repeat I didn't quite follow what you were saying there. Are you saying that pressure is causing them to back off that bill by less?
No, not back off. There's 2 bills out there right now. My bill is to establish a task force to, come up with an agreed standard statewide. And there's a bill that Representative Wolgamott has that would just, use recognized standards from across the nation. Neither of those bills have had a hearing. And the goal of this is to reiterate, is that we want a standard. Right now, the policy that's in effect by Hennepin County is Brady Giglio plus whatever the county attorney decides. And that's what we don't want. We don't want 87 different standards for Brady Giglio in the state. We want a uniform standard that's fair and ensures due process for the officers.
And the State Department of Human Services did really come down on Hennepin County for not adhering to Brady Giglio. So it did seem like they needed to do something to better comply with those.
Which department was coming down?
The State Department of Human Services report on, policing.
Well, I'm not saying we shouldn't. We all want law enforcement to be doing the right thing. We want them to follow the rules. We want to make sure that innocent people are not being accused of anything, that they should get their due process. They should have all evidence that is being held against them open and available. We don't want that arbitrarily decided. We don't want a county attorney from one county to decide an incident that happened a long time ago in a different county that a different county attorney didn't think was Brady Giglio worthy to now apply her own standards to that. So we want a uniform statewide standard that's the stakeholders have input in and that legislators have a discussion and place into law.
Representative, DFLers earlier today posted a DE amendment set to come up tomorrow that deals with straw purchasers, bringing the higher felony charge for folks involved in that. Wondering if you've seen that DE and what your thoughts are about that conversation potentially coming up tomorrow.
We were made aware from stakeholders that there was a DE coming. I have not read it. I believe it results closely related to the urgency that we called last Thursday about that bill. And we're not about taking credit. If they want to clone it and get it done, whatever we can do to close that straw purchase bill, that's what our goal. As I said on the floor during the urgency, our goal is not to prosecute people and put them in jail. Our goal is to have the straw purchases not happen to start with by discouraging people with the higher penalties and with the education that comes with someone that does do the purchase knowingly and provides a firearm to someone that shouldn't have it, like the Burnsville situation, that there's dire consequences.
Actually does kind of mimic yours, but it's added on top of a machine guns bill, so I'm wondering if
I believe they're using that as a vehicle bill, and then it'll be a delete all.
Does your bill have the enhanced, so there's a felony and there's a certain amount of years that would come with that for a straw purchase, but then there's a kind of a surcharge penalty if that gun was used in the commission of a violent crime. Does that reflect what your bill had, or the Republican-backed straw purchase bill had?
I'm not going to speculate on something I haven't read.
Representative Robbins, your bill, that would include any county, right? I know you used Hennepin County as an example, but is it any city attorney within any county?
You know, I had an earlier version of the bill that was broad for any city attorney in any county, but we've narrowed it. The 4970 is the current bill on the table, and we did narrow it just to Hennepin County, and that brought you know, some comfort to the County Attorneys Association, and they're now with us on this bill, so.
And is it because of these specific cases?
Yes, because the real issue, the only people asking for this seem to be city attorneys in Hennepin County, and so we thought, well, let's focus on the real problem, and, you know, there doesn't seem to be a problem in other jurisdictions, so we want to be as narrowly tailored as possible to address the issues that our officers are facing.
Would that be unusual? I know there's been talk on some of these other bills about not having a patchwork of different rules in different counties. Would this be pretty unusual?
I think it would probably be unusual, but I mean, we're in a dire situation. And so my cities are asking for this help. And that's my job as a state legislator, to come and fix the statute. Because right now in statute, city attorneys are prohibited from picking up cases the county attorney declines. And so we want to fix that so that when the cities see strong evidence that they could have sustained these charges and they're unable to do so, it's incredibly frustrating. So that's what we're trying to get at.
Real quick, just back to the straw purchases. I had one more quick question on that. That bill that's going to be heard tomorrow in the committee also deals with reporting on gun trafficking and firearm seizures. What are your thoughts on that as just a policy in general attached to that bill?
Can you ask it again?
Yeah, that bill also deals with requiring reporting on gun trafficking and firearm seizures, reporting on stolen weapons, that sort of thing. Do you have any thoughts on that being attached to this, straw purchases bill?
I would love to get the information. I believe, and this is just anecdotal, but I believe that when we get the information where these guns are coming from. Look, if a gun is picked off on the street, on a traffic stop, it's recovered stolen, it's used in a shooting, there's an E-trace done on that firearm with the ATF, and within a day or two, the investigation agency will know who is the last known purchaser of that firearm. I've seen just one case in the last 5 years that I've been here where they actually made a big deal out of where the firearm came from. That would be the truck stop shooting. That's because it was a local big box business. I've heard testimony from people from the north side of Minneapolis, and I've had private conversations with numerous individuals who laugh at the thought of our gun transfer laws in this state making any difference because, as quoted from them, they're just going to get in a car and a day and a half later they'll be back from some state that doesn't have these, or when they're done picking up their fentanyl, they'll come back with guns. And that's, I suspect if we had seen a large amount of guns coming from reputable dealers, we'd have heard about it a long time ago. So yes, I would welcome that information being released.
Just real quick generic question. With deadline coming up, how optimistic is the caucus feeling about some of these pieces of legislation moving forward?
On our particular law enforcement bills? We've got 2 days left of committee hearings and public safety. I hope they're heard. I hope we can put some pressure on. Hope is this place runs on hope. You got to hope you can make a difference. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I could make a difference, although some days I really wonder.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.